6 months passed since the Battle of Kelvar Prime. The galaxy had changed in ways nobody could have predicted. Humanity was no longer a forgotten myth but a living presence among the stars. The Coalition provided resources to search for other human sleeper ships, and slowly, more survivors were found. Thousands, then tens of thousands. Not enough to rebuild Earth, but enough to matter. Doyon stood on the bridge of the Eternal Dawn II, a ship built from both human ingenuity and Coalition technology. It was faster and stronger than their original vessel, but it carried the same name to honor what they had sacrificed. He now held the rank of Admiral, responsible for training Coalition forces in what they politely called asymmetric warfare tactics. But what everyone really meant was how to fight like humans. The mixed species, units under his command were learning. Slowly. The biggest challenge wasn't teaching them tactics, but getting them to accept the mindset. Coalition soldiers were trained to value every life, to retreat when victory became too costly. Humans were trained to win at any price. Suhyuk ran special operations divisions now, leading strike teams on missions against the Dravok that the regular military couldn't handle. His teams boarded enemy ships, sabotaged supply lines, and conducted raids that Coalition commanders still considered insane. But they worked. The Dravok advance had slowed. Mina oversaw the construction of new human vessels at a shipyard orbiting a blue star. She had become famous among Coalition engineers for her ability to make alien technology work in ways it was never designed to. She called it creative interpretation of safety specifications. Her supervisors called it terrifying. Kieri led a squadron of pilots, both human and Varan, who flew with the aggression that shocked veteran officers. She had proven that humans could fly circles around most Coalition races, a talent that came from 10,000 years of atmospheric combat experience and, as she liked to joke, playing too many video games. But not everything was peaceful. Jisoo had spent months studying recovered Dravok bioships, trying to understand their origin. What she discovered in the genetic code made her hands shake. The Dravok weren't natural. They had been created, bioengineered as weapons by an ancient civilization, and some of the genetic markers buried deep in their DNA matched human patterns. It's not conclusive, she told Doyon privately, but the probability is high. Whoever made the Dravok knew about human genetics. Either they studied us or humans made them, Doyon finished quietly. Before the Exodus, before we left Earth, some group created a biological weapon that we lost control of. We can't know for sure, Jisoo said. It was 10,000 years ago. Records are lost. But if it's true, then we're fighting monsters that our ancestors created. This knowledge weighed heavily on them both. If humanity had created the Dravok, then every world the swarm consumed was partially their responsibility. It was a dark legacy that nobody wanted to face. Meanwhile, not everyone in the Coalition celebrated humanity's return. A secret organization called the Preservation Cadre had existed for centuries, dedicated to maintaining galactic peace. They studied the old records, the true histories that most citizens never saw. They knew why the galaxy had been peaceful for 10,000 years. Because the most violent species, the one that constantly fought wars even against itself, had gone extinct. Now humans were back. And the Preservation Cadre saw them as a threat to everything they had built. Their leader, a being that called itself Kessitarn, gathered the cadre in a hidden station far from Coalition space. Humans are a plague, Kessitarn announced to the assembled members. They teach violence. They glorify sacrifice. Already other species are adopting their brutal methods. If we allow this to continue, the galaxy will descend into warfare once again. What do you propose? Another member asked. We eliminate the threat. We stage attacks on human settlements and make it look like the Dravok are responsible. The Coalition will be forced to exile them for their own safety. Without human leadership, we can return to proper warfare. Civilized warfare. The cadre began their plan. Attacks struck human colonies, supply convoys, and training facilities. The strikes were carefully designed to look like Dravok tactics, but Suhyuk's experience made him suspicious. The timing was too convenient. The targets too specific. Someone inside the Coalition is helping them, he told Doyon. The Dravok couldn't know our locations this accurately. Bora investigated quietly, using the hacking skills that had served them well before. She traced communications, followed suspicious fund transfers, and slowly uncovered the preservation cadre's network. When she presented the evidence to Doyen, he felt a cold anger settle in his chest. "They're trying to make us the enemy," he said. "After everything we've done, they still see us as monsters." "Not everyone," Jisu reminded him. "Most of the coalition supports us. It's only this group. But they're powerful and they're hidden. We need to expose them." The confrontation came at New Haven, the first human colony established since their return. 10,000 humans lived there, building a new home on a green world that reminded them of Earth. The preservation cadre launched their largest attack yet, sending mercenary forces equipped with stolen coalition weapons. But they made a critical mistake. They underestimated how many coalition citizens had come to respect their human allies. When the attack began, the colony's defenses were supported by Varan soldiers who refused orders to stand down, by reptilian engineers who had trained under Mina and wouldn't abandon her people, by pilots from a dozen species who had flown with Hieri and learned that courage wasn't limited to any one race. The Eternal Dawn 2 arrived with a full battle group, both human and coalition ships fighting side by side. Suhyak's special forces, now including soldiers from 7 different species, boarded the mercenary vessels and captured proof of the cadre's involvement. The evidence was broadcast across the entire galaxy. The preservation cadre's conspiracy was exposed. The Coalition Security Council moved quickly, arresting members and dismantling their operations. Kestarn was captured trying to flee to unclaimed space. In the aftermath, the Coalition High Council made a historic decision. Humanity would be granted not just citizenship, but representation. A permanent seat on the council. Recognition that they had earned their place among the stars through sacrifice and courage. But there was one more battle to fight. The Dravok swarm had reorganized despite losing their command ships. New leaders had emerged, learning from every encounter. They launched a massive assault on Coalition space, a final push to consume everything in their path. Above New Haven, Doyen stood with Varthek, watching the approaching enemy fleet. 300,000 Dravok ships against a coalition force of half that number. Even with human tactics, the odds were terrible. "This could be the end," Varthek said quietly. "If we lose here, they'll sweep through the core worlds. Trillions will die. Then we won't lose," Doyen replied. He opened communications to the entire fleet, both human and coalition forces. "This is Admiral Doyen. I know you're scared. I know the odds look impossible. But let me tell you something about humanity. We've faced impossible odds since we first learned to walk upright. We survived ice ages, plagues, and our own stupidity. We crossed an entire galaxy in a broken ship and lived. You know what we learned from all that?" He paused, letting the words sink in. "We learned that survival isn't about being the strongest or the smartest. It's about refusing to quit even when everything says you should. It's about standing up one more time than you get knocked down. And it's about protecting the people who can't protect themselves no matter what it costs." Across the fleet, soldiers from dozens of species listened to the human admiral. They had trained with humans, fought beside them, learned from them. They had seen what humans could accomplish when they refused to accept defeat. "The Dravok think they're going to win because they outnumber us," Doyen continued. "They think being a hive mind makes them superior. But they don't understand what makes humans dangerous. We're not a hive mind. We're individuals who choose to fight together. Every one of us decides to be here, to stand and fight, and that choice, that free will, makes us stronger than any forced unity could ever be." The battle began. It was brutal and bloody, exactly as everyone expected. The Dravok came in waves, but the coalition fleet held. Human tactics adapted and improved by dozens of species proved effective. Boarding actions destroyed key vessels. False signals and electronic warfare confused their coordination. Kamikaze runs by volunteer crews willing to sacrifice themselves broke their formations. Hieri led a squadron straight through the heart of the enemy fleet, targeting their new command ships. She flew like she was dancing, every movement precise and deadly. Behind her, pilots from 6 different species followed her lead, trusting her completely. Suhyuk and his mixed-species commandos boarded the largest Dravok vessel, fighting through corridors filled with warrior forms. Daehyun, no longer the terrified boy from 6 months ago, fought beside his commander with steady hands. Yunbi saved 3 wounded soldiers while under fire, refusing to leave anyone behind. Mina coordinated engineering teams across the fleet, keeping damaged ships operational through improvisation and willpower. The third day of testimony felt different. The air in the assembly hall was thick with tension. Delegates who had seemed merely curious before now looked worried. Some looked afraid. The images from the previous day, of broken human soldiers choosing to return to battle, had disturbed many species who valued logic and self-preservation above all else. Velthorn walked to the speaking platform slower than before. His age and injuries seemed heavier today. Ambassador Hyunwoo noticed that the alien veteran's hands were shaking slightly. Whatever was coming next, it was personal. Today I will tell you about Young Sik in more detail. Velthorn began without preamble. I mentioned him yesterday, but I did not tell you the full story. I did not tell you how he saved my life, or what that act cost him. The holographic display showed a jungle world, thick with vegetation and heavy rain. The footage was poor quality, taken from military sensors in difficult conditions. This was Talon 4, a contested border world. My unit was assigned to patrol with a human platoon as part of a joint training exercise. We were supposed to observe each other's methods, learn from each other. It was meant to be routine, safe. Velthorn's voice grew quiet. On the third day of patrol, we walked into an ambush. Not a training exercise. Real enemies, well-armed and positioned perfectly. They hit us from 3 sides at once. My unit followed standard procedure. Take cover, return fire, wait for the situation to develop before making tactical decisions. The humans reacted differently. They returned fire immediately while moving forward into the ambush. This seemed like insanity to me at the time. You do not advance into an ambush. But the human lieutenant shouted something about breaking the kill zone, and his soldiers followed without hesitation. The footage showed chaos. Weapons firing, soldiers moving through jungle, explosions creating clouds of smoke and debris. It was impossible to see clearly what was happening. Young Sik was the youngest member of the human platoon. He had been in service for only 8 months. When the ambush began, he was walking near me in the formation. I saw him get hit by shrapnel from the first explosion. His leg was badly wounded, bleeding heavily. He fell next to me. Velthorn paused, his one eye closing as he remembered. I started to treat his wound following my training as a combat medic. But Young Sik pushed me away. He pointed to where the enemy fire was heaviest and said that his squad leader was pinned down in that direction. He said he could provide covering fire from our position while the rest of the platoon flanked the enemy. I told him he was wounded, that he needed medical attention immediately. He looked at me like I had said something strange. Then he smiled and said, "I can still shoot, so I am still useful." He propped himself against a tree, adjusted his weapon, and started firing with precision at enemy positions. The holographic display focused on thermal imaging that showed one heat signature remaining in a defensive position, while others maneuvered around it. That single position drew most of the enemy fire. Young Sik stayed in that spot for 17 minutes. He knew he was drawing enemy attention. He knew every weapon was targeting him. He kept firing anyway, giving his squad time to flank and destroy the ambush. When the fight ended, we found him unconscious from blood loss. His weapon was empty. He had used every bit of ammunition he carried. Several delegates were openly disturbed by this account. The concept of self-sacrifice was not unknown in galactic culture, but usually it was reserved for protecting leaders or critical assets. Young Sik had sacrificed himself for tactical advantage, for people who were his equals, not his superiors. We evacuated Young Sik to a human medical facility. He survived the surgery, but his leg was badly damaged. The doctor said he would never serve in combat again. I visited him during his recovery, expecting to find him relieved that his military service was over. Instead, I found him angry and depressed. Velthorn gestured, and the display showed a hospital room. A young human male sat in a bed, staring at bandaged legs with hollow eyes. Young Sik felt he had failed his unit by getting wounded. He felt guilty that others had to risk themselves to complete the mission after he fell. I could not understand this thinking. He had saved lives, including mine. He had performed beyond any reasonable expectation, yet he felt shame rather than pride. A new figure appeared in the holographic transmission, a middle-aged human woman in a white coat. She bowed slightly to the council before speaking. "I am Dr. Subin, a xenopsychologist specializing in human military psychology. I have been asked to provide context for what Velthorn is describing." Counselor Draven acknowledged her. "Please proceed, Doctor." "Humans evolved as social pack animals," Subin explained. "Our survival depended on group cooperation. Individuals who abandoned their group faced almost certain death. Over millions of years, this created deep psychological programming. We feel intense loyalty to our combat units. We would rather die than abandon our team. This is not a choice we make consciously. It is hardwired into our psychology. She brought up brain scans and genetic charts. Furthermore, humans evolved as both predators and prey. We were hunted by larger, stronger animals. We survived through intelligence, cooperation, and sheer stubborn refusal to give up. The humans you see in combat are not acting abnormally by our species' standards. They are acting exactly as evolution designed them to act when facing threats. A delegate from the Wisdom Collective asked, "But surely civilization should have changed this. Surely education and culture should override primitive instincts." Dr. Subin smiled sadly. "Civilization is only 12,000 years old for humans. Evolution took millions of years to shape us. Our brains still operate on ancient programming. We can control it with effort, but in moments of stress or danger, the old patterns return. We become what our ancestors were, stubborn survivors who refuse to quit. Is there any way to change this?" Another delegate asked. "Any way to make humans less intense in their approach to conflict?" "You could do that," Subin admitted. "With genetic engineering or psychological conditioning, you could probably remove these traits. But you would not have humans anymore. You would have something else. These characteristics are not a flaw in our design. They are our design. They are why we survived when other species on our world went extinct." Velthorn spoke up again. "Dr. Subin is correct, but she has not mentioned the most disturbing part. I asked Young Sik during my visit to the hospital if he would return to military service if his leg healed. He said yes immediately. I asked him if he would make the same choice again, knowing the cost. He said yes without hesitation. I pushed him on this. I said that his sacrifice almost killed him, that he still suffered psychological trauma from combat, that he could choose a safer path. And Young Sik explained something to me that I have thought about every day since. The image of Young Sik in the hospital bed changed. The camera was now showing him speaking directly, his voice clear despite obvious pain. "Sir, with respect, you do not understand," Young Sik said in the recording. "I did not sacrifice myself. I did my job. My job is to protect people who cannot protect themselves. My job is to stand between danger and innocent lives. If I do not do this job, who will? If everyone chooses safety over duty, who protects the weak? My trauma, my pain, my injuries? These are the price of doing what is right. They are not too high a price. They are just the price, and someone must pay it. I would rather it be me, someone trained and willing, than a civilian who never asked for war." The recording ended. The chamber was completely silent. Many delegates looked uncomfortable, shifting in their seats or looking away from the display. "This is what I mean about the cost of human victory," Velthorn said softly. "They win battles, yes. They are effective warriors, yes. But they understand the price better than any species I have encountered. And they pay it willingly over and over because they believe it is right." He took a deep breath before continuing. "But now I must tell you something that will concern you greatly. During my time observing human forces, I learned about a classified project. I was not supposed to see the files, but I have contacts in intelligence services. What I learned frightened me enough to request this testimony." Ambassador Hyunwoo sat up straighter, his calm expression finally cracking. He had not expected this. "The project is called Horizon. It is a comprehensive military analysis program. Human strategists have created detailed combat simulations for warfare against every species in the Galactic Council." Gasps and angry shouts erupted throughout the chamber. Delegates stood up demanding explanations. Some called for immediate sanctions against humanity. Others called for military intervention. Councillor Draven raised his hand for silence. It took several minutes for order to be restored. When it was quiet again, he looked at Ambassador Hyunwoo with ancient sad eyes. "Ambassador, can you explain this project?" Hyunwoo stood slowly. His face was pale, but his voice was steady. "Project Horizon exists. It is classified, but since Velthorn has revealed it, I will confirm the details. Human military analysts have indeed created combat simulations against every known species. We have studied your weaknesses, your tactics, your capabilities." The second day of testimony began early. Word had spread across the galaxy about Velthorn's opening statements. Billions of beings were now watching the broadcast. The assembly hall was packed with observers standing in every available space. Velthorn returned to the speaking platform looking even more tired than before. He had not slept well. The memories he was sharing haunted him even now, years after the events. Counselor Draven spoke first. Velthorn, you claimed yesterday that you have not revealed the worst of your knowledge. Before you continue, I must ask, are you certain you want to proceed? Once this information is public, it cannot be hidden again. I am certain, Velthorn replied. The Council must know what humanity is capable of. Ambassador Hyunwoo remained silent in his seat. His government had sent urgent messages through the night. They wanted him to stop this testimony, but he had no legal way to do so. All he could do was sit and listen as their secrets were exposed. Let me tell you about the Battle of Helian's Gate in detail, Velthorn began. This battle is taught in human military academies as a standard example of their tactical doctrine. 300 human Marines were ordered to hold a mountain passage against enemy forces. Intelligence reported approximately 5,000 enemy soldiers advancing toward the passage. The holographic display showed a narrow valley between two steep mountains. It was the only route through the mountain range for several hundred kilometers. Whoever controlled this passage controlled the entire region. In standard galactic military thinking, this situation has one logical outcome. The smaller force retreats to fight another day. The larger force takes the passage. Resources are preserved. Lives are saved. Everyone follows the accepted rules. Velthorn's voice grew harder. The human commander was a woman named Captain Minseo. Yes, the same mining supervisor from Kelo 7 had joined the military after that incident. She received the order to hold the passage for 24 hours while reinforcements arrived. When she saw the size of the enemy force, she did not request permission to retreat. She looked at the terrain and started planning. The humans spent 6 hours preparing the battlefield. They collapsed parts of the passage to create choke points. They positioned their heaviest weapons in elevated positions. They rigged explosives throughout the valley. And they prepared backup positions, and backup positions for the backup positions. A military observer from the Telvari Empire interrupted. Surely they requested additional forces? They did not, Velthorn answered. When asked why, Captain Minseo said that 300 Marines were sufficient to hold ground against any number of enemies if the terrain was used correctly. This was not arrogance. This was confidence based on training and experience. The holographic display began showing footage from the battle. The images were rough, taken from helmet cameras and defensive sensors. The observers watched in growing horror as the battle unfolded. The enemy attacked in waves as expected. The first wave entered the passage and was destroyed by explosives and crossfire. The second wave tried to climb the mountainsides and was picked off by human snipers. The third wave attempted to use artillery to bombard the human positions. Velthorn pointed to specific moments in the footage. Here is where human warfare becomes truly difficult to understand. When the artillery damaged their primary positions, the humans did not retreat to secondary positions. They split into small groups, each group operating independently. They turned the battle into dozens of small fights throughout the valley. This should not work. Military theory says that divided forces are weak forces, but humans train differently. Each Marine is taught to act independently while still supporting the overall mission. They call it decentralized command. Every soldier is a leader. Every leader is willing to follow. The footage showed human Marines moving through smoke and fire, calling out positions to each other, covering each other's movements, adapting to changing situations without waiting for orders. For 18 hours, 300 humans held that passage against 5,000 enemies. They used every trick, every deception, every terrain advantage. When they ran low on ammunition, they took weapons from fallen enemies. When their equipment failed, they improvised repairs using whatever materials they could find. Velthorn paused the footage on an image of Captain Minseo, covered in blood and dust, still directing her forces. I was monitoring this battle from orbit as part of a training observation. I could not believe what I was seeing. The humans were not just holding the passage. They were winning. The enemy commander finally retreated after losing over 2,000 soldiers. The humans lost 42 Marines killed and 98 wounded. They held the passage not for 24 hours but for 36 hours until reinforcements arrived. When Captain Minseo made her report, she apologized for the casualties. She considered the battle a tactical success but a moral failure because she had lost Marines under her command. Several council members were shaking their heads in disbelief. This kind of warfare was beyond their experience. Their own military forces would have retreated, negotiated, or been destroyed in similar circumstances. But this is not the worst part, Velthorn said quietly. The worst part is what humans do after battles like this. They analyze every mistake. They study what went wrong. They incorporate lessons into new training. Each battle makes them more dangerous. A holographic transmission request interrupted the testimony. Counselor Draven accepted it, and the image of an older human male appeared above the chamber. He wore a military uniform with many decorations. His face was weathered like stone, his eyes sharp and calculating. "I am General Taeyang of the Earth Defense Forces," the man said without preamble. "I have been authorized by my government to respond to Velthorn's testimony." "You may speak, General," Draven acknowledged. Taeyang looked directly at the council members. "Everything Velthorn has told you is true. We fight the way he describes. We train our forces to never surrender, to use every advantage, to turn every battle into a fight the enemy wishes they had never started." The bluntness of the admission shocked many delegates. They had expected denials or excuses. "But Velthorn has not told you why we fight this way," Taeyang continued. "He has not explained the context. Humans evolved on a death world by galactic standards. We were prey animals who became predators. We fought for survival for hundreds of thousands of years before we built civilizations. War is not something we learned. War is something we evolved with. We know our methods frighten you. They should frighten you. They frighten us too. But we did not become this way by choice. We became this way because anything less than total commitment meant extinction. Our history is written in the bones of species that could not adapt, could not fight, could not survive." General Taeyang's image focused on Velthorn. "You said we are the most dangerous species you have encountered." "You are correct. But danger is not the same as evil. A blade is dangerous, but in the right hands it protects rather than threatens. We offer ourselves as the blade that protects this council." The transmission ended abruptly. The chamber erupted in dozens of different languages as delegates argued among themselves. Some were afraid. Some were angry. Some were thoughtful. Counselor Draven called for order, and the noise gradually subsided. He turned to Velthorn. "Do you have more testimony to present?" "I do," Velthorn answered. "I have told you about human tactics and capabilities. Now I must tell you about the cost. I must tell you what war does to humans and what they do despite that cost." He gestured, and new images appeared in the holographic display. These were not battle scenes. They were medical facilities, counseling centers, and memorial gardens. After the Battle of Helion's Gate, I visited the human wounded. I wanted to understand how they processed such trauma. What I found disturbed me more than the battle itself. The images showed human soldiers sitting in quiet rooms, some crying, some staring at nothing, some talking to counselors. They looked broken in ways that physical injuries could not explain. Humans suffer from mental damage after combat. They call it post-traumatic stress disorder. It affects their sleep, their memories, their ability to function in normal life. They have entire medical fields dedicated to treating this condition. Among my people, warriors who cannot handle combat simply do not continue as warriors. But humans break from combat and then return to combat. They carry their psychological wounds and fight anyway. Velthorn's voice filled with something between admiration and horror. I met a young human soldier named Youngsik during my observations. He was 19 years old, barely an adult by human standards. He had been in 3 major battles. He suffered from terrible nightmares and anxiety. His hands shook when loud noises occurred. By any reasonable standard, he should have been retired from service. I asked him why he continued to serve. He told me that his trauma was not as important as protecting others. He said that someone had to stand between civilians and danger, and he was trained to do that job. His pain was personal. His duty was universal, therefore duty came first. The chamber was silent again. The concept was almost impossible for most species to grasp. Why would anyone choose to remain in a situation that caused such damage? The 4th day began not in the public assembly hall, but in a secure chamber deep beneath the council building. Only senior council members were present, along with a small group of humans. The room was shielded from all recording devices. What was discussed here would remain secret unless the participants chose to reveal it. Counselor Draven sat at the head of the table, his ancient face unreadable. Velthorn was there, looking exhausted. Ambassador Hyunwoo sat with his hands folded, waiting. And next to him sat a man in a pristine military uniform covered with medals and insignia. This was Admiral Hoon, commander of the human Deep Space Fleet. "We are here because Project Horizon has been exposed," Draven began. "Before we continue public testimony, I need the complete truth. Admiral Hoon, you have clearance to speak freely. No recording devices are active. What is the real purpose of Project Horizon?" Admiral Hoon was in his 50s with gray hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of authority earned through decades of service. Project Horizon began 150 years ago, shortly after humans achieved faster-than-light travel. We knew we would encounter other species. We knew nothing about those species, and we knew our own history. He activated a small holographic display in the center of the table. It showed Earth from space, but something was wrong. Large parts of the planet glowed with an unnatural light. Clouds of dark smoke covered regions that should have been green. This is Earth during the last war, our final global conflict before unification. We fought with nuclear weapons, biological weapons, chemical weapons. We nearly sterilized our own planet. 3 billion humans died in 5 years. The survivors lived in bunkers and underground cities for 2 generations, while the surface slowly became habitable again. The images changed, showing human cities in ruins, people suffering from radiation sickness, children being born with horrible defects. It was the kind of devastation that most species could not imagine inflicting on themselves. When we finally emerged from the bunkers and rebuilt civilization, we made a choice. We would never forget what we had done. We would never allow it to happen again. We created Project Horizon as a way to understand conflict so thoroughly that we could avoid it. A council member from the Logical Collective spoke. "You study how to fight other species to avoid fighting them? That makes no sense." Admiral Hoon nodded. "I understand your confusion. Let me explain our reasoning. Humans start wars for many reasons, but the most common reason is fear. Fear of the unknown, fear of being attacked first, fear of losing resources or territory. Project Horizon removes the unknown factor. When we understand exactly how a conflict would unfold, we can see all the costs clearly, and when we see the costs clearly, we choose diplomacy instead." Furthermore, he continued, "By knowing how to fight, we know how to defend. We know what tactics might be used against us. We can prepare countermeasures without actually deploying them. It is like having a lock on your door. You do not install a lock because you plan to trap people inside. You install it to keep threats outside." Velthorn spoke up, his voice rough. "What the Admiral is not telling you is that Project Horizon goes far beyond defensive planning. I have seen the files. They include offensive strategies, weak points in Council defense systems, psychological warfare techniques specific to each species. This is not just a lock on the door. This is a detailed plan for breaking into every house in the neighborhood." "You are correct," Admiral Hoon admitted, surprising everyone. "Project Horizon includes offensive capabilities, but it also includes something else. May I show you?" Draven nodded permission. The Admiral pulled up new files, these ones marked with the highest security classifications. The display showed detailed analyses, but not just of alien species. It showed human weaknesses, human vulnerabilities, human psychological breaking points. Project Horizon studies humanity with the same intensity it studies other species. We analyze our own weaknesses because we know the greatest threat to galactic peace is not an external enemy. It is us. It is the possibility that we might lose control again, might return to our old ways. So we study ourselves, we understand ourselves, and we build systems to check our own power." Ji-1, the military liaison officer, entered the chamber. She carried a data chip that she handed to Admiral Hoon. He nodded thanks and continued speaking. "Velthorn's testimony has been valuable, but it has also been incomplete. He does not know the full context because he was not meant to, but now that information is public, I can reveal the rest." He looked directly at Velthorn. "You found Project Horizon files because we allowed you to find them. You were given access because we needed you to reveal this information publicly. Everything that has happened in this testimony was planned 6 months ago." Velthorn stood up suddenly, his forearms tensing. "What are you saying?" "I am saying that you and Ji-1 have been working together, with Council approval, to create this exact situation. We needed Project Horizon exposed in a controlled way because an uncontrolled exposure was coming." Admiral Hoon activated another display. This showed ship movements along the galactic border, formations and patterns that indicated military buildup. The ships were not human and not from any Council species. These are Krell Dominion forces. They have been gathering intelligence on humanity for the past 2 years. We detected their surveillance operations 18 months ago. Analysis suggested they were planning either to attack us or to recruit us as mercenaries for their expansion plans. Counselor Draven's eyes widened slightly, the first expression of surprise anyone had seen from the ancient being. The Council was not informed of Krell activity in our space. Because elements within the Council already knew, Admiral Jehoon replied. We have evidence that 3 Council members have been receiving intelligence briefings from Krell sources. We do not know if this is collaboration or simply information sharing, but it represents a security breach. The room erupted in urgent conversation. This was far bigger than one species' military capabilities. This was about the security of the entire Council. Velthorn contacted us 6 months ago, Admiral Jehoon continued. He had fought Krell forces before his retirement and recognized their scouting patterns near human space. He came to us with a proposal. Expose Project Horizon publicly to create deterrence. Let the galaxy know what humans are capable of. Make the Krell understand that attacking us would be costly beyond any potential benefit. Velthorn sat down slowly, looking at Jiwan. You knew all along, she nodded. I helped develop the plan. Your testimony has been genuine. Your observations are real. We just gave you access to information at specific times to guide the narrative. This is manipulation, a council member accused. This entire testimony has been theater. No, Velthorn said firmly. Everything I have told the council is true. The battle accounts, the psychological observations, the revelations about Project Horizon, all of it is accurate. The only manipulation was in timing and presentation. Admiral Jehoon brought up a final image. It was a recording, old and grainy, showing an elderly human woman speaking to a camera. Her face was deeply lined with age, her eyes sad but strong. This is Bora. She is 112 years old. She lived through the last war as a child. What she is about to tell you is the real history of humanity, the context that explains everything else. The recording began to play. Bora's voice was thin but clear. I was 7 years old when the bombs fell. I lived in a city that no longer exists. With parents I watched die from radiation poisoning. The last war taught humanity a terrible lesson. We learned that we are capable of destroying everything we love. We learned that our greatest enemy is ourselves. When the war ended and we rebuilt, we made promises. We promised to never forget. We promised to control our violent nature. We promised that if we ever encountered other intelligent life, we would be better than we had been to each other. But we also knew that promises are not enough. We needed systems, safeguards, constant vigilance. We needed to understand our capacity for violence so completely that we could recognize when we were approaching dangerous territory. Project Horizon is one of those safeguards. It is a mirror that shows us what we could become if we stop being careful. The recording ended. The silence in the chamber was heavy. Bora's words carried the weight of lived experience of suffering that most species could not comprehend. So now you know the full truth. Admiral Jehoon said, Humanity is dangerous. We know we are dangerous. We study our danger like a scientist studies a disease, trying to understand it so we can cure it or at least control it. Project Horizon exists not because we plan to wage war, but because we are desperate to avoid it. Counselor Draven sat back in his chair, his ancient mind processing everything. The Krell threat is real? Very real, Admiral Jehoon confirmed. They see humanity as either a threat to eliminate or a weapon to employ. Velthorn's testimony creates a third option, a threat too costly to challenge, forcing them to seek targets elsewhere or negotiate peacefully. But this means we have been manipulated. Another council member protested. You have been informed. Velthorn corrected. Everything I have told you is information the council needed. The 5th day of testimony drew the largest audience in council history. Beings from across the galaxy watched the broadcast, knowing that what happened today would shape the future of galactic society. The assembly hall was filled beyond capacity, with observers standing in every available space and floating in the zero-gravity sections reserved for species that preferred such environments. Velthorn walked to the speaking platform for the final time. He moved with more confidence than in previous days. Whatever burden he had been carrying seemed lighter now. The truth was out. His testimony was nearly complete. Counselor Draven called the session to order. The vast chamber fell silent immediately. Velthorn, you have shown this council the nature of human warfare, the cost they pay for their methods, and the hidden preparations they have made. Today you will make your final recommendation. Please proceed. Velthorn bowed slightly, a gesture of respect. I will complete my testimony by telling you what humans do when they are not at war. I will show you the other side of their nature. Then I will offer my recommendation. The holographic display activated, showing images far different from the battle footage of previous days. These images showed human cities, parks, schools, hospitals. They showed art galleries and concert halls. They showed humans interacting with dozens of different alien species in peaceful cooperation. For all the time I spent studying human military forces, I spent equal time observing human civilians. I needed to understand if their violent capability was all they were, or if there was something else. The images shifted to show a classroom on a human colony world. A human teacher stood before students of 6 different species, teaching mathematics. The human was patient, encouraging, adapting lessons to fit different learning styles. This is Yunji. She is a teacher who volunteered to work on a frontier colony where multiple species are learning to live together. She earns very little money for this work. She faces daily challenges from cultural misunderstandings and language barriers. When I asked her why she chose this difficult path, she said that education builds bridges between species. New images appeared, showing the same teacher 2 years later. The setting was different now. The colony was under attack from raiders. Buildings were burning, people were fleeing. This is the same colony during a pirate raid. The attackers were after valuable minerals stored at the settlement. They did not care about civilians. Evacuation ships arrived, but there was not enough room for everyone in the first wave. The holographic footage showed chaos and fear. Alien children crying, parents trying to protect them, raiders getting closer. And in the middle of it all, Kyunji gathering children of multiple species, organizing them, keeping them calm. Yunji was offered a place on the first evacuation ship. As a human civilian with no combat training, she was priority for evacuation. She refused. She stayed with her students, all of them alien children whose parents had already been evacuated or killed. She told the ship captain to take more children instead. Velthorn's voice grew thick with emotion. I was part of the military response force that arrived at the colony. We drove off the raiders and secured the area. When we found Unji, she was in a collapsed building, using her own body to shield 3 children from falling debris. She died from her injuries before we could get her to medical care. The chamber was completely silent. The image of Yunji, a simple teacher who made an impossible choice, filled the display. Her face was kind and gentle, showing no hint of the warrior spirit that resided in her species. This is what I mean when I say humans contain contradictions. Yunji had no military training, no combat experience, no reason to believe she could fight raiders. But when faced with a choice between her own safety and the safety of children, under her care she chose the children without hesitation. The same instinct that makes human soldiers fight impossible battles made this teacher sacrifice herself for students who were not even her own species. Velthorn turned to face the assembled delegates directly. I have spent 80 cycles studying warfare. I have seen bravery and cowardice, honor and betrayal, victory and defeat. But I have never seen a species that embodies such extremes. Humans are capable of savage warfare and profound kindness, often in the same individual. He paused, choosing his next words carefully. After Yunji died, her students asked me about human beliefs regarding death. I am not an expert in human culture, but I did my best to answer. One child asked if humans believed in life after death. I did not know. So I asked another human teacher who had arrived with relief supplies. The teacher told me that humans have many different beliefs about death, but most share one common idea. They believe that people live on through the impact they had on others. Yunji would live on through her students, through the lessons she taught, through the choice she made. Her death was not meaningless because it saved lives. New images appeared, showing memorial services held across the galaxy for Yunji. Thousands of beings of hundreds of species had gathered to honor a simple teacher who died protecting children. This is what I needed to show you before making my recommendation. Yes, humans are dangerous. Yes, they fight with a ferocity that disturbs us, but they also teach, heal, create, and sacrifice. They are complex in ways that make them difficult to categorize as simply dangerous or safe. Velthorn took a deep breath. My recommendation is this. Humanity should remain in the Galactic Council with full membership status. However, they should agree to complete transparency regarding their military capabilities and submit to oversight on projects like Horizon. In exchange, we should offer them a formal defensive alliance. Several delegates immediately began objecting, but Velthorn raised one of his 4 hands for silence. Let me explain my reasoning. The Krell Dominion is a real threat. You heard about this in yesterday's classified session. The information will be made public after this vote. The Krell are expanding aggressively, and they view the Council as weak. They are not wrong to view us as weak. Our military forces are designed for peacekeeping and defense. We have no experience with total war. We have no species that fights the way humans fight. If the Krell attack, we will lose unless we have allies who understand warfare at the deepest level. A delegate from the Wisdom Collective stood up. Are you suggesting we recruit humans to fight our wars for us? That is morally wrong. No, Velthorn replied firmly. I am suggesting we learn from humans while we teach them our values. I am suggesting that dangerous capabilities used in the service of peace are better than peaceful intentions with no ability to defend them. Ambassador Hyunwoo stood and requested permission to speak. Draven granted it. Hyunwoo walked to the center platform standing beside Velthorn. The Council faces a choice today. You can reject humanity based on our capacity for violence. That would be understandable. We are frightening when we fight, but consider what you would lose. He gestured, and new images appeared. These showed joint human-alien scientific projects, cultural exchanges, trade agreements, cooperative exploration missions. In every image, humans worked alongside other species with obvious dedication and friendship. We came to the stars seeking connection. We joined the Council seeking purpose beyond ourselves. Yes, we brought our warrior nature with us. We cannot leave it behind, because it is part of who we are. But we also brought our capacity for cooperation, our drive to learn, our desire to be better than our history. Velthorn mentioned Project Horizon. I want to expand on that. Project Horizon exists because we are terrified of ourselves. We study warfare so intensely because we know what we did to our own world. We prepare for conflicts we hope never to face because we understand that hope alone is not enough. A new figure appeared via holographic transmission. This was Commander Dong-Woo, a young human naval officer in his early 30s. He was clean-cut and professional, representing the new generation of human military forces. I am Commander Dong-Woo, he said. I represent the Joint Defense Initiative, a proposal from Human Military Command. If the Council accepts our continued membership, we offer to share our tactical training with Council Defense Forces. Not to teach you to fight like us, but to teach you to adapt, to survive, to defend effectively. He brought up displays showing training simulations and joint military exercises. We have developed programs that combine human tactical flexibility with your advanced technology and peaceful philosophy. The result is a defensive force that can protect without becoming what it fights against. Another holographic transmission appeared. This one showed a Krell ambassador, a large being with dark metallic skin and eyes that reflected light like mirrors. His presence caused immediate tension in the chamber. I am Ambassador Vexnar of the Krell Dominion, the figure announced. I have been observing these proceedings with interest. Councillor Draven, you have given me permission to address this assembly regarding the accusations made about my government. Draven nodded. You may speak. The Krell Dominion denies any aggressive intentions toward the Galactic Council. We are simply expanding into unclaimed space, as is our right. However, these proceedings have been most educational. We now understand that humanity is unpredictable and potentially uncontrollable.